Welcome to the Four Eyes Podcast, brought to you by Young OD Connect. We give you a clear view into the new grad optometry world across Canada and the US, and we are your hosts. I'm Dr. Deepan Kaur.
And I'm Dr. Amrit Bilkhu. I really like these glasses. And even like 2 days ago when we were on Zoom, you were wearing different glasses. And then last time we recorded, you were wearing different glasses.
Yes, maybe.
You have this much money for all these glasses?
I'm getting a collection of my glasses. I'm trying to get one every day of the week. 7. I think I'm at 4 now.
Wait, that's so cool. Wait, why? I don't know. Since I've known you, you've only ever worn the same pair of glasses.
That's because I could only afford one pair of glasses. No, it's because, I work at an independent eyewear clinic, so I'm taking advantage. So these ones are Makitas, and they're cool because they're very lightweight.
Yeah.
And for higher prescriptions, it's nicer.
That looks similar to Or Green. So we're gonna carry that at Northern Site. So it's all titanium, like metal frames, super lightweight, really skinny frames, like nothing over the top. And then it's funny, like just like yours right now, they're all bright colors. And so when you look at it, you're like, whoa, like that's way too neon. But then the minute you put it on your face, I don't know what they do.
That's what, when I first saw these on the like little rack, I was like, oh, those are too orange. And I put them on and I was like, oh my God.
They don't even look that orange. Like they kind of look pink. I mean, everyone who's listening to the podcast is really missing out. So maybe you guys should stop and watch this episode.
Oh yeah. I'm like gyrating my head side to side so you guys can like enjoy the glasses more. I'm a huge fan of Makitas. I wasn't before, and then after I got my own pair, I was like, oh, these, now I know why so many people love these.
Yeah. So what other pairs do you already have then?
My other pair, it's a little bit of a thicker frame. It's LM. And then my other lighter ones are Garrett Light. And then
those are popular.
And my other ones are actually from Bailey Nelson.
Oh, cool.
They're my clear ones that I got a long time ago, like in our earlier podcast. I think you even said, you were like, where are those glasses from?
Yeah.
I was like, they're my new ones. That's when I actually first started working at Bailey Nelson. And then
okay.
Gave me a free pair.
So you're aiming to get what, 3 more then?
3 more, possibly more. I don't know.
Oh my God, that's so fun.
I know. I never was like a glasses person, even though I wore glasses every day, but I didn't really care. And now I think it's because the eye stylists and opticians I work with at Sphere, that they kind of inspire me to get more glasses.
Well, it makes a huge difference. Like that's what I'm trying to learn right now too, is how to sell multiple pairs and how to make a story about it and convince people. So yeah, like my shoe analogy is like top notch like analogy, because like it makes people really like stunned. Oh yeah,
I didn't count my sunglasses, so I also have like so I guess I have Ray-Bans and I have Crew sunglasses.
Nice. But like right now, we just put our inventory out on our shelves for all of our frames. So yeah, like every day right now, right before the clinic is about to, get ready to be open, I'm literally just like, ooh, let me put these on. Ooh,
yeah.
Ooh, I like these. And Manraj is like, oh God, I hope we sell all these frames. I'm like, it's okay. I'm buying 8 of them anyway, so I'll just pay it off.
I know, that's what happens though. I feel like when you get your new collection in, everyone that works at the clinic is like, oh, let me just try all these on.
Yeah. Actually, what was really interesting that I wanted to share with the listeners was we just went to Alaska in May. So, I mean, who knows when this episode will come out, but we were there in May and we went to go see Dr. Alex Kuhn, our fellow Four Eyes co-host. We missed Rav, Dr. Randawa. She was supposed to be there too. But yeah, it was like the trip of a lifetime. So if no one's been to Alaska yet, you need to go. Call Dr. Kuhn. or make friends with the local there to do like local activities
Yeah.
because I feel like it would be a much different experience compared to the people who go on the cruise. Cruise is obviously
Yes.
more relaxing. I think we should have done that in hindsight. What Alex made us do?
I mean, yeah. So Alex Kuhn was born and raised in Alaska. So she is an Alaskan girl through and through.
Yeah.
But yeah, go to Alaska if you're pretty outdoorsy, you like to hike, you like to be out the door out,
And
like you like to see the
healthy.
outdoors. Yeah, and like if you like seeing mountains, oh, if you like seeing animals,
Yes. Lots of animals.
grizzly bears, oh my
Deer,
God, you will
moose.
definitely see a moose. If
Yeah,
you've
on the
never seen
highway.
it, you will see
On the
a
highway.
moose every day. If it's a
Yeah.
baby moose, if it's an adult moose, whatever it is, you will definitely see a moose. You'll see sheep, you'll see goat.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it was very, very fun. And yeah, the best part was we got to spend time with Alex.
Sometimes I think back to that trip and I'm like, we really literally could have died at any moment on that trip. Like, Alex is just, when we say physically fit, outdoorsy to like a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And she would take us on these trips. So, we would be packing our bags, ready to go on this like glacier hike or ATV rides. And she would tell her parents because we were staying there, with the family. And then she'd be like, "Yeah, we're taking Amaret and Deepon, to the glaciers." And they're like, "We lost a few people on that glacier a while back, but yeah,
For
lots of
fun.
people die there, but have fun."
Yeah.
And we would just stare at Alex like, um, are we doing that same thing? She's like, you'll be fine."
I think what's funny is when we did a glacier hike and our tour guide was like, yeah, I'm just going to take you off path a little bit because I just want to see what's a little bit further down the glacier. And he's like, we were like, okay, like, is it going to be much harder? It's like, no, no, you guys are a fit group. It should be fine.
He said, "You
Um,
guys seem like you can walk." That's what
yeah.
he said.
So our standards were, okay, we just need to walk horizontally, like on this horizontal
Yeah,
path.
not
That should not
vertically
be a
at
big deal.
80-degree incline
Yeah. And
with
then he
ice
was like,
shoes.
yeah, exactly. So we all had ice shoes on so we wouldn't like slip, obviously, on the glacier. And then he would take us on this horizontal path. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, we're going to go that way. And then the path all of a sudden turned vertical at a
Yeah.
90-degree
There
angle.
was no path.
I don't know. It was so we
It
did
was
it. We all
insane.
did it, but I was holding my breath a couple times and I was
Yeah.
like, well, if I
If we
fall.
slip, we're done. That was a real outdoor experience.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, go to Alaska. It's fun.
Yes.
It's an outdoorsy lifestyle for sure, but it's
Oh,
fun.
yeah. But yeah. Oh, we should do our intro and get
Oh, yeah.
started. Today, we're going to talk about how to break up with a patient. And
Mhm.
I think this is such an important topic because I do see this conversation come up here and there on like Facebook forums or emails, but it's not something that we really learn how to do in school. It's
Mhm.
not something that I guess people will openly talk about, and it's probably not a conversation coming up all the time. This is somewhat of like a case reflection that a lot of the listeners really, really liked when we did that in past seasons.
Mhm.
And I have a case to share. So I'll kind of get started and just talk about it. And then we can talk about, what we would do. And this is about a year and a half ago. I was an associate at a practice and we had a patient come in for comprehensive eye exam. He complained that, he had blurry vision in one eye for the past 3 to 4 months. He came here from the States. So he had no history of his eye exams or medical history with him. And, we did the eye exam. He had a CRVO with macular edema in that one blurry eye and some mild diabetic retinopathy in the other eye. CRVO, macular edema, 3 to 4 months. I mean, his VA was like 2100, right, in that eye. Educated the patient, stressed the importance of seeing a family doctor.
Mhm.
He said he didn't have a registered doctor here. So we even gave him the information because with Ontario, there's a website where you can register your health card number. And the government actually connects you with a registered family physician who's accepting new patients. So
Oh.
we even like gave him the website and said, go here, take these steps, find a family doctor. And I wrote a note about the CRVO so that he could take that note to the walk-in clinic that was across from our office.
Hmm.
In addition to that, obviously, I also referred to a retinal ophthalmologist for any further treatment options, management plan, and just recommendations. For my follow up, I said, follow up with me in about 3 months. We'll do another dilation retinal imaging or whenever the ophthalmologist recommends he has a follow up, right? Because I mean, if he's going to do injections or something or laser treatment, I'm going to hold off until that's kind of calmed down.
Mm-hmm.
And the patient was like, yeah, like listening and kind of like, okay, like I'll get this done. So a few weeks later, I get a letter back from the family doctor who said that he did a physical on the patient. He does have uncontrolled diabetes, blood pressure, cholesterol. He's got everything. Recommended insulin and medication, and said patient refused treatment and wants to monitor. Then I got the letter also back from the OMD when he saw the retinal ophthalmologist and stated the same diagnosis, offered the treatment plans for injections, and patient refused the treatment and didn't want it and wants to monitor.
Did they have any further recommendations when he
Mm,
refused treatment? Like
Monitor,
just
right? I
oh.
mean, monitor, like it was both of those letters from the GP and the OMD, they were thoroughly written, like, extensively discussed side effects and risks and
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah, blah. And patient strongly refuses treatment against medical advice, blah, blah, blah. Uh, Go back to optometrist. We called the patient and said, come back in 3 months for a follow up. We'll dilate you again and we'll do retinal imaging because that's all I have is an Optos. I don't have an OCT or visual field machine or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes back because I don't know, he likes me or he thinks I'm nice. And so he's listening to like my follow up plan and he comes in. And then again, vision is like 2,200, right? I mean, it's
So got
getting worse.
worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting worse. And then I have to sit there for, another half hour having that conversation again of why it's important to listen to what the OMD recommends and what the GP recommends. And he's asking me for my opinion. So I'm like, yeah, injections will help you. And
Mm-hmm.
I advised him to go see those referred doctors again. He listened, he went again, and then he refused the treatment.
Treatment.
Right. So then those ophthalmologists are getting annoyed too. Like, why stop sending this patient to us if he's not going
Mm-hmm.
to do
Listen.
treatment.
Mm-hmm.
He's very
Oh.
paranoid with medical treatment, right? Like he believes that insulin is it's something that doctors are making up and he thinks injections are fake and or it's a money scheme or the doctors just want to
Oh.
take everything from me and it just kind of starts to seem like he does have some sort of a mental health disorder where I maybe he's not fully comprehending the importance of the treatment. He
And
doesn't
the
fully
consequences.
and the
Yeah.
consequences, right?
Yeah.
After like 3 or 4 visits like this, he's also then emailing my staff every week like articles about, insulin or anti-VEGF treatment. And he's like sending 2-page long emails to my staff saying, I don't want to follow what these doctors are saying. I want Dr. Bilkhu to send me to someone else, or I want Dr. Bilkhu to follow this. And I don't believe this stuff. And so he's
Oh.
taking up our staff time because then our staff is like, what do we do with these emails? It made the staff very uncomfortable because then he would argue with them, get frustrated with them. And then it made me
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable because I had to leave my exam door open to make sure I'm not alone, in a
Mm-hmm.
closed room with this patient. So you start to feel uncomfortable too. And then you're
Mm-hmm.
dreading him coming in because then he's scheduled again for another 3 months. Because
Yeah.
now it's my duty to make sure he comes in.
Yeah.
And so, you're a new grad OD, you work as an associate doctor in this like setting where you're only there a few days a week, you're uncomfortable, you don't feel safe at some point because of how frustrated and upset this patient gets sometimes. Your staff is uncomfortable and you're monitoring a condition that you don't have the diagnostic tools to really monitor and you can't even treat. So
Especially if it's becoming worse.
it's
Like,
becoming worse. So
yeah.
how does one handle this condition? Because I was really stuck in this place for clearly about 4 follow-ups
Mm-hmm.
until I had to say, okay, something has to change. But how would you handle it?
I think I would try to do a different retinal specialist.
Mhm.
Maybe, I don't know. I feel like in this case, if the retinal specialist wasn't able to convince the patient to go with the treatment, the retinal specialist in Alberta would end up monitoring the patient every 3 months instead of giving it back to the optometrist, because
Yeah.
now it's on them. Like if something becomes worse,
Yeah.
it, like it's indicative that the optometrist referred to them and there's something wrong. And if they're like, well, we're just going to give it back to the optometrist and things are getting worse, they're still at fault for that part.
Yeah. The first referral that I sent, like initial onset, yeah, the OMD was like, patient refuses treatment, advised him to like follow up in whatever it was, 3 months, 4 months, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the patient refuses to go. You know what I mean? Like I don't know
Oh,
what it was. He felt that any like MD or OMD, like the family physician at the walk-in, the ophthalmologist, he was like, they just want to take my money. They just want to give me, chemicals and like I don't know.
oh,
He just
okay.
had this and then I referred him again to the
Mm-hmm.
same. So we
Mm-hmm.
have larger OMD offices where they have like, 8 OMDs that work there. So,
Oh, okay.
it may not be given to the specific one, so I just sent the referral again and I said, patient is denying or refusing treatment. Please reassess, educate the patient again on importance of treatment because I tried educating, it's not working. And so
Mm-hmm.
then I think another OMD took him in that same location.
And it was the
And
same
then
result.
and then
Okay.
that OMD was kind of like, yeah, like he doesn't want treatment, follow up with like optometrist or
Okay.
like he
So
was
I
just
see.
kind
So
of
he's
like,
refusing to go to the
he would refuse to go
MD, to
anyways.
the ophthalmologist, and then he'll
Yeah.
be like, I'll go to
Yeah,
you,
he'll come
Dr.
to
M at
me.
Bilkhu. But that's the other thing too. Like even if you send him to a different optometrist, he probably won't
Yeah,
continue
he's
care
just
there.
doesn't trust any doctor. And I don't know what it was about me that made him trust me. I don't think I would have done anything different compared to like
Yeah.
what another, doctor would have done.
Yeah.
But he just and that's where the harassment started coming in, like especially with my staff. He'd be like, when's my follow-up appointment with Dr. Bilkhu? I want to send Dr. Bilkhu this email, have her read about this insulin and blah, 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 blah. And the staff was like, okay, like, no, you're not allowed to see Dr. Bilkhu until the day you are booked. Like, do not come into
Mm-hmm.
our office. You cannot walk in, blah, blah, blah.
But
Yeah, it
I
was
would
getting
probably
a little
even
hectic.
I would even probably write to the family doctor if there's like a psychological evaluation that maybe needs to occur,
Hmm.
just to
I
see
never
maybe
thought
the
of that.
patient. Well, that's something you wouldn't think of because you're out and you're like, I
Hmm.
don't know, like what is happening right now. Most
Yeah.
patients are pretty compliant. It's not like we see this. Actually, I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe if you worked in downtown Toronto, maybe that's different.
Yeah. They
But
would, they would
they
be.
probably see like things go crazy there. But um, yeah, I would probably like write to the family doctor saying, I think this patient might need a psychological evaluation due to
Hmm.
these reasons. And if the family doctor agrees or disagrees, again, that's up to
Like you've
them. There's
done
only
your
so
due
much you can
diligence.
do. Yeah, there's only so much you
Mhm.
can do at that point. But again, I still, just from what you're saying with your staff and how you in general felt around the patient, that feeling of being uncomfortable or
Mhm.
unsafe, you have to fire that patient from the clinic,
Yeah.
because again, it's how you guys are feeling. Like I would understand if this patient came in every 3 months, but was nice to the staff and
Mhm.
fair to you. Like, yeah, then okay, fine. You can see them every 3 months and just check how things are going. But the point where you feel unsafe or threatened or your
Mhm.
life is at risk at any point, you have to, or anyone's life in the clinic is threatened, you have to fire the patient.
Yeah.
You can't keep
Yeah.
them.
As an associate and a new grad, I didn't really know that we would have any say in firing a patient in a practice that I don't own. So, and that's
Right.
honestly why I think I went through 4 follow-ups with this person until the last one, he was shouting at my staff when he came in.
Mhm.
And after I did his eye exam, I was like, I dreaded coming in for a week because I knew he was scheduled. Like it's
Yeah.
not okay to feel like that. And I spoke with my employer, and the minute I told my employer about it, they were like, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Like, "Yeah, we can like no, don't book him anymore. Don't see that patient." And I don't know why. I was so shocked that I was like, I didn't know that I had a say in that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, I just felt like as an associate, you're not involved in the handling of, patient
Yeah.
care and
I mean,
dynamics like that with the clinic.
I
And
feel
he
like
was like,
some
"No, don't see that person anymore." So
I feel like
it was relieving to hear that.
well, that's good that he handled it that way, like the owner of that
Yeah.
clinic. But I feel like some
Yeah.
owners might be like, well, I'll see the patient. They don't
Yeah.
have to see you. So
Yeah.
I'll see that patient. And then if
Yeah.
it doesn't work, maybe with the owner, then they'll, be like, okay, now this patient can
Which
be
makes sense
let
too,
go of.
because I would think that too. Like the owner is the one who kind of makes that final decision to
Mhm.
say who's fired and who's not.
But
Um,
I don't always agree with that because I feel like if you're telling the owner that you
yeah,
feel unsafe and the staff feels unsafe, that should be like, especially if there's multiple people saying that, that should be an easy, okay, we're not seeing this patient
hmm,
anymore. But I feel like there'd be some clinic owners who'd be like, well, no, let's see if I can figure out what's going on with this patient,
yeah,
etc. And then if there's nothing resolved, then we can let go of the patient. But I don't know. I would do what that owner did. And if
yeah,
you're saying like, look, this is the situation with the staff and me, I would immediately be like, oh yeah, no, we're not. That's fine. We'll
yeah.
let go of this
Like
patient.
not
So
scheduling anymore.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I handled the situation in the beginning. But even after that step, I still didn't know what to do after, right? Like now you know that you want to fire a patient or break up with the patient.
Hmm.
So the first thing that I started writing down like tips for what new grad ODs and maybe even student ODs can do if they're in that situation. Even the first day that you feel like you had a really uncomfortable situation with the patient, at least just bring it up
Hmm.
to staff because the staff is going to observe those patients, right? At the
Hmm.
front desk, in the optical. Talk to the staff and be like, "Did you get any sort of a vibe from this patient? Anything?" And if they all say yes or no, you can kind of, get a sense of, is this something that I should just kind of keep in the back of my head, but see that patient one or two more times, see if it was just all in my head. But if the staff is like, yeah, that patient is, you know,
Yeah. I mean, and again,
not
to
someone you want to
clarify,
see.
it's not like a weird patient. I feel like
No,
that's like
no,
it's like
no. This is
it's like
like an angry patient or
yeah,
someone
like
or even
again,
someone who's
threatened,
demeaning
you
or
feel
threat.
threatened with your
Yeah.
life, like or again, abusive to the
Like
doctor or the
harassing.
staff.
I mean, harassing too.
Harassment,
Like,
yeah. It's
like
funny when you were like, "Oh, we should ask like if you have a question about the vibe of this patient." I feel like me and my staff do that on the daily where we're like,
every day.
"What's happening with this person?" And then the other team member will be like, "I don't know, but I felt but not like that. Like you feel
Yeah, not
unsafe."
that's not enough to break up with the patient, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely, like, talk to staff about it because then if the
Mhm.
staff also agrees with you when you're the associate doctor and the owner is not there that day,
Mhm.
then when you guys have those staff meetings or when you actually bring it up to the employer, then at least you kind of have your staff to also support what you're saying. And you can let the employer know too. It's like, it's not just me, the staff also feel this way. We all feel this way. Also, so then you don't feel like you're the only person bringing it up, because it can be scary to even just talk about it if it's just you. You don't know, am I overthinking the situation? Am I being over dramatic? Because I did feel that way for the first 3 visits. I was like, am I just being over dramatic that this patient is really making us, like, me feel uncomfortable? But by visit 4, when my staff was also expressing it, that's when I felt more confident to say, okay, now I got to bring this up. Like this, now we can't have this person come in anymore.
Right.
And then another piece of advice, contact your association and ask for any advice, professional advice, or even legal advice, because sometimes your associations may even have like legal counsel available for ODs to just discuss situations. So you can always ask, is this a legal situation where I have that, authority to break up with the patient within my rights? And so I think that's like a great piece of advice that I wish I knew back then, because then I probably would have talked to the association like by visit 2.
Yeah.
Like, to
And
know
ask
if
them.
this is something.
Yeah. And they usually have certain guidelines too, where they'll be like, if this situation occurs, you are validated in, breaking up with this patient or terminating the relationship with this patient. So I guess it depends on each provincial association
And
or
state.
state
Yeah.
association. But even just contacting them or sending them an email about, hey, I'm in this situation. What should I be doing, or how should I handle this? I
Actually,
would do that first too.
even about those guidelines. So I did, before this episode, I looked up the Ontario guidelines. The guidelines were under MDs, like physicians, but I'm sure it applies for most doctors. And then I also looked up the AOA that has guidelines and their ethical standards for when breaking up. And it was interesting actually, because I didn't really consider this, but you cannot break up with the patient just because they refuse medical treatment or they refuse the treatment that you recommend. And I feel like in the beginning of this case, that was what was going on in the back of my head, right? I was like, I don't want to see this patient anymore because he's not following my treatment recommendations or any other doctor's recommendations. And now I'm going to be responsible for, his condition getting worse.
Can you
And
imagine if that was part of the guidelines though? Every kid that or had to wear like +5 glasses or something, and the parents would come back and be like, "No, they didn't wear their glasses." And you're like, "Okay,
you could
you're
like break
fired.
up. Bye, you're fired.
I'm
Actually,
referring
yeah.
you
But
somewhere
like,
else."
it's funny because like I don't think of it in that situation. Like, yeah, if
Yeah.
a patient has dry eyes and they didn't use the drops,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna fire them and be like, get out. but
But you know what? I
like,
never thought about it that way. I think it's because when you said things were getting worse and
yeah.
he still wasn't following the treatments that you advised him to do, then it's like, what are you
Like,
supposed
what
to
are you supposed
do
to
in that
do?
situation if
And
things are getting worse and he can potentially go blind? Because you definitely do not want to be the last doctor that sees
right?
that
And so
patient.
what do you do to get out of that? Like, how do you get out of not having to be the last doctor before this patient spirals downwards? And so
Yeah.
just an FYI, you cannot break up with the patient legally just because of that. But you can break up with the patient when their behavior is offensive to you and the staff, if you feel unsafe, or if they've harmed anyone, or if there's verbal and or physical abuse, harassment, all that kind of stuff. So then of course by, follow up 3 and 4, I had more of a case to document and say, okay, now this is the reason why I'm going to break up with this patient. But yeah, that was interesting. And so, like you said, Deepon, what do you do, when the patient's just not following treatment? You have to document the
Document. Yes.
crap out of your chart. And
Yes.
so he had a lot of documentation, like
Yeah,
every sentence word for word.
I
Yeah.
think that's the one thing we definitely, or one of the most important things we learned in school. I always remember during my rotations, they're like, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen.
It's so
So
true.
in these kind of cases, I think, yeah, even my attending ODs were like, if you have a complicated patient or someone is just not listening to your treatments all the time, or they're just not compliant, you have to document, document, document. This was like a lot of our, I think, when we did a lot of glaucoma cases, because not everyone is
Yes.
compliant with their glaucoma
Mhm.
medications. So yeah, document, document, document. Because say besides the behavior of this patient, if they were like very friendly to you and your staff,
Mhm.
but they would come in and you're like, okay, like, did you do any of the treatments or see the ophthalmologist? And they're like, nope. Like, okay. So, like, and then you
And
continuously tell them, well, now you're counting fingers in your one
can
eye.
you imagine
So
your AP, like your assessment plan is like, patient didn't listen.
yeah.
No prob.
Yeah, but
I
I mean, it's like then you do a follow-up every month and they
yeah.
still continue. So I feel like, but the thing is, if that patient were to come back and be like, I went blind because you
Yeah,
didn't tell me.
because of
No,
you.
it's not. You have
Mhm.
all that documentation. That's when it becomes really, really important to document every little
Every
thing, even
sentence.
every sentence that comes out of this patient's mouth, even the way they're behaving,
Mhm.
which follow-ups they had, whichever doctor, because
Mhm.
those doctors will have documentation. So it's just really to cover your
Yeah.
butt if
And
anything
then
legal occurs or illegal
another
occurs.
tip when documenting, make sure you list the solutions that were thought of
Mm-hmm.
and talked about during those initial occurrences, especially when
Yes.
there's behavioral problems like with the patient, even that. So, did you let the patient know of their behavior, or did you, do anything to try and change the patient's responses so that they would calm down or anything like that? Just anything that you tried to do to resolve the issue, write that down too.
Yes.
Because yeah, it's true. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. And there's so many ODs that I worked with in the past years that would always look at my charts and be like, "Why are you writing so much?" And I'm like, "Because one day the lawyers are going to find me and I'm going to
That's
be
true though. We
sued."
do.
And
I definitely know I take it for granted. Like
yeah.
something so simple, I'll be like, even if you have, everyone has their eccentric patients, and it's like,
Mhm.
well, you got to be careful because if you don't document what you said, or exactly, that's a good point, like what your solutions were, what the
Yeah.
recommendations were,
Yeah.
um, to the T, it can bite you later on.
Yeah,
So
really bad. So now, let's say you finally decided to break up with the patient. What do you
yes.
do next? You have to write your notice of termination, or you have to write an official certified letter with your header on there, your signature,
Mhm.
that informs the patient that they are going to be terminated from the practice in a certain amount of days. So, of course, you have to give them a reasonable, at least 30-day notice, and make sure you send that letter where it's tracked, and they need a signature or like a return receipt to make sure that the patient has actually received the letter. So, don't email, don't leave a phone call, type out the letter, print it. If you don't have a printer, because nobody does anymore, go to the library, print it out, mail it through FedEx or whatever, Canada Post, and just make sure they get it. And
Yeah.
include the reason of termination. But just to save your legal butts, do not give a very detailed reason of termination. Just make it very broad.
You can get a
Oh,
lawyer to
yeah.
look over it too if you have one at your fingertips just
Get
hanging
Deep
out.
on an eye to look over it. Send in your termination letters to podcast4eyes at gmail.com.
We'll take a look.
We'll send it
Yeah.
over. We'll put our four eyes slang in there and attitude and hand motions. And
Yeah.
then
But it's true. Like yeah, anything you kind of like a letter that you write to terminate a patient, you have to be careful how you word it. I know I would definitely not just write it and send it. I would have many people
Mhm.
look over it or even try to get legal advice to be like, is this worded properly? Because again, you don't want it to bite you in the arse later.
Also, in that letter, now this may be different for each state and association, but definitely for most provinces, you have to provide a list of alternative providers for care in that letter. So, I think in
Mhm.
Ontario, it's at minimum 3 different doctors or just 3 different locations for those services.
In
So
Alberta, you don't have to provide anyone's name, but it's
really?
nice if you do. Yeah, it's not mandatory. I just read it in our
Oh,
guidelines, but it would
we
be
have
nice if you
to.
did. Yeah, so you
Yeah.
don't have to, but definitely you have to let the patient know at least 30 days in advance that you will be
Mhm.
terminating the relationship and
Yeah.
for them to find care elsewhere. But
Mhm.
we are not required to
Yeah.
give another optometrist or ophthalmologist name.
Yeah,
Either
and I
case.
think this is why we're stressing, like, make sure you look at your state or provincial association
Mm-hmm.
guidelines,
Because
because
it's different
I know in
everywhere.
Ontario, I think we have to. A really funny comment that was made from another OD in, like, a Facebook forum was, I basically for any patient that I absolutely dislike and break up with, I I recommend the 3 most least favorite optometrists in the neighborhood. Which I don't recommend because we are all colleagues, we all need to uplift each other, but when I read that, I thought it was just so funny. I was like, "Oh, man." I was like, That's
Can you
hilarious."
imagine if your clinic is getting all these like letters of like, could you please provide this patient care? And you're like, wow, so many
Wow, so
referrals.
many
This
referrals.
is amazing. Yeah, but why are these patients so shitty? Like, no, just
But,
kidding.
you do still have to, I think, provide emergency care to that patient before the termination date. Or even I think after the termination date, if they don't have another doctor like registered that they can see before you. So and it's like emergency medical care, like, whatever, horrible foreign body in the eye, chemical
Hmm.
splash, you have to at least inform your staff that,
Hmm.
hey, we're going to release this patient. This patient's not going to be with us anymore, but if they call, if they walk in, do your emergency triage. If it's seriously an emergency situation, we do have to schedule them in. We
Yes.
have to see them. So just communicate that with your staff too, so that they're not turning the patient away. Because again, that'll bite you in the arse.
Yeah. That'll be our next series. What will bite you in the arse plus good vibes?
Goodbye.
And then just give like if there is a healthcare provider, eye care provider that is willing to take on the patient, just letting them know, like giving them a heads up about
Hmm.
exactly what's going on and why you want to transfer care, just so they are aware.
Mhm. Same
Yeah.
with, not just other healthcare providers, but healthcare providers that are associated with the patient and their insurance companies or networks. I think you
Mm-hmm.
also have to send a letter to all of them and let them know that you're just officially not that patient's eye care provider anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's necessary to tell them why, but I think
Mm-hmm.
you have to inform them, like, "This patient is not at my clinic anymore.
Oh
They're not
yes.
my
Oh yeah.
patient. So leave me alone. Don't call me. Don't text me. Bye."
Yes. It's just like I don't know if anyone's had a case where they fired a patient, but that patient refused to go see another eye care provider and was like, "No, I would only like to see this person." So, I don't know what would happen in that situation.
But I mean,
I don't know.
you'd have to talk to your lawyer then, right? Because at the end of the day, your letter already says
Yeah.
it's not a mutual decision. It's
Yeah.
like, I've decided you're not welcome here anymore.
Yeah.
I've read, like, honestly, on the Facebook groups, like, I've read those stories, right? Like on Odie's on Facebook, we had to call the police on this guy
I
and
know.
like
I
he had
think
to
I've read
walk
some
in and
reviews too on a couple clinics in Calgary where there was a person who left a horrible review about some clinic and the clinic owner responded saying, "You are no longer welcome at our clinic because you constantly abuse our staff and the other optometrists that are here. So please discontinue writing these reviews because you are no longer a patient here." And I was like, oh, this patient just like keeps on coming back probably to this clinic and just like
that's
harassing
scary.
staff. And like, yeah, but then it's like, it's crazy because you like the optometry world is not that dramatic. But when you're like, I got to call the police on this
then you're just kind
person,
of like,
then you're
okay,
like,
that's a
oh my
whole nother
God,
level.
that's a whole nother level that I haven't seen yet. Maybe it's more common in the States.
But that's what you would do. I read one where they were debating of getting like an actual restraining order on a patient who continuously kept coming in and they were fired, and the patient like abuses the staff and yells at them and does whatever. And then you don't know what these people are carrying and what they have in their pockets.
Oh my
Like you just
God. Yeah.
don't know.
Nowadays. Yeah. You
And
don't know.
so one was like, I need a restraining order. And I was like, this is like a whole nother world of firing a patient. And I don't want to fire patients because of that. You don't know how they're going to retaliate. So get your lawyer ready to go just to make sure. Those are all the tips, for the episode, and just to kind of really make sure that everyone who's listening has a little bit more direction and feels a little bit more confident in how to break up with the patient and how to do it properly and legally. I'm so lucky, like knock on wood, I have not had that sort of an experience since that one patient. So yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting case that I don't think a lot of people openly talk about. And I'm glad we talked about it today, because what you're saying as well makes me feel better knowing like how I handled the situation. You had similar thought processes to me. So, and I'm sure a lot of people will probably go through the same motions. So yeah, I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, it's a really, like I was going to say, there's certain situations where I feel like, and I think Dr. Hardeep Kataria talked about this, where there's certain situations where even girls feel uncomfortable, but then there's other associate or owner ODs that are like, oh, I don't feel that way. Like,
it's so different compared to you being the optometrist in a closed room alone with them, and their face is literally so close to you in a slit lamp. It's a whole different
and you're close quarters, like your whole
right. So like, so if even at that point, if your staff even doesn't feel like it's a big deal, if you still feel uncomfortable, it's valid because you have a different experience.
This is why I believe in some forms of AI or some forms of remote testing.
Telehealth,
where you don't have to physically be there, and have some robot that's just like doing what I'm telling.
It's so true. But yeah, we can wrap this episode up. It was a short one. We wanted it to be kind of like a case reflection style. And we really hope that you guys learned a bit from this episode. We hope that you guys resonate with the experience. Hopefully, this has helped anyone out there who might be in a similar experience. And share your experiences with us. Comment on our Instagram videos, email us, DM us, let us know what you think about the episode. And hopefully we'll have a few more cases down the road to share with you guys. Thanks for listening to Four Eyes, the podcast series brought to you by Young OD Connect. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram or YouTube at Four Eyes Optom for more content. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.